Welcome to episode 3 of A Breath of Fresh Career. I am here with Sandeep Bhanote, CEO and founder of a company by the name of Radius8. This guy is a retail technology guru. He's a serial entrepreneur. I got to tell you a quick story, Sandeep, which hopefully will make you blush a little bit, but you and I first met, I don't even know, years ago. You were the CEO of Global Bay Technologies. We met at National Retail Federation show. Like, I was going into Javits Center to meet a bunch of client companies, and you were one of them. And you're like, yeah, Kane, let's meet up. And I'm doing recruiting for you at the time. And long story short, I meet you at the Motorola booth. You guys were partnered with him, I think. And some guy was like, yeah, Sandeep's over there. So I kind of eavesdrop on you because you're talking to somebody a little bit. And I was blown away because it's a prospective customer and you're like, oh yeah, no problem. You were like the best private country club general manager, man. You're like, no problem. We can do that. And if we can't, we'll make sure we do. This guy, Sandeep right here, father first, by the way, let's make sure we're perfectly clear because if kids are tuning in here, by the way, you might hear a couple cuss words, but father first, this guy understands the customer, okay? He understands what they need. He understands what they're looking for, and he understands how to get it for them if they don't possess that. And that's unbelievable. So really quickly, CEO and founder of Radius8, was a CEO and founder of a company called Global Bay Technologies, which essentially got acquired by Verifone. This guy is into technology. He's into everything mobile technology, loves a great bottle of wine. Let's not put that past him for 1 second. Customer first. He's actually working with Radius8 now and some brand names, companies like Adidas, Eddie Bauer, Orvis, Snipes. I think it's a fashion shoe company, right? Fashion shoe retailer.
Yeah, German. Yeah.
So without further ado, dude, welcome Sandeep to A Breath of Fresh Career. I'm so psyched to have you here.
Thanks, Justin. Hey, man, it's really cool to be here. And dude, I think the world of you, man. And I'm so excited you started this podcast. And I can't imagine a better guy doing it than you, man.
You are too much. Thank you so much, really. Well, tell us about Radius8. Tell us what you guys do and what you guys offer.
Yeah, so, I got to tell you, so, after we exited, Global Bay to Verifone in 2011, I was with Verifone for 2 years. It was actually pretty awesome. I loved working at Verifone for 2 years. I learned a lot because when you come from a small 40-man business to a 6,000-man organization or 6,000 people organization, dynamics are so different. And so after my agreement was up, I had a 2-year agreement with Verifone post acquisition. I spent some time with the wife and kids at home trying to because I was pretty much living on a plane for 8 years.
I remember. Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, hey, Justin, I'll call you when I'm in I'll call you in a different time zone, right? So basically, you can never catch me in Jersey.
Never.
So I spent some time at home, but of course, I couldn't just sit at home, do nothing. So I was working on my next concept. While Global Bay was focused on the 4 walls of the retail store, right? How do I, talk your story about Motorola? We did a ton with them as it related to, the 4 walls of in-store mobility, like POS and inventory, all that stuff. And, I thought about sort of the next problem that we wanted to solve for. And gosh, we went to I was at Freehold Mall or something like that. And I was with my wife and my kids at the time. And, all I saw were these millennials walking by, with this phone in their hand, walking by the big piece of glass in the storefront of the window. I'm not looking at that, looking at the piece of glass in their hand.
Oh, yeah.
And I said to myself, gosh, there's got to be a way to somehow connect the two. How can that physical store have a digital conversation with those customers that are within the radius of that location, that store, whether if I'm immediately in front of it or if I'm 10 miles away? The point is, how do we create gravity between that store and that mobile customer base, right? And so that was sort of the idea behind Radius8. And so what we do at Radius8 is we enable retailers to dynamically change the e-commerce experience when customers are near a store. So we started this concept with this business with one simple question, which was, why is it that my e-commerce site experience looks exactly the same no matter where my customer is? That's a missed opportunity for not only the brand, but of course the consumer. Those are missed buying opportunities. So what our technology does is we allow retailers to hyper localize the digital experience. So if I'm on my phone and I go to an Eddie Bauer, or if I go to an Adidas, and I'm near an Adidas store, one, it's going to tell me the mobile web experience is going to tell me, hey, dude, you're 2 miles away from your nearest Adidas store, number one. Number two, check out all the amazing things happening in that store. In fact, if you think about it, Justin, there's so many amazing things that happen in that physical store that never get communicated digitally to customers within that radius, that location. You'll never know that that particular store might have an event, or that particular store has particular products, or have these really cool store associates working there. Whatever the case is, those things never get communicated digitally at all. Yeah. And so Radius8 becomes the bridge by which all the amazing things happen in that store, and being able to communicate that digitally in a sensible way. Because what you don't want to do, and the biggest problem that exists today, is it's a one-size-fits-all solution. And that's not the case here. You've got 800 stores. Each store is a unique ecosystem. How about we celebrate that and expose that digitally? And that's what Radius8 does.
That is incredible. So you're telling me that, Adidas in New York versus Adidas in Miami.
Sure.
Generally, well, they don't, but thinking of a different brand, they'll take the same approach to the consumer walking by, or even mobile, consumer. Whereas what Radius8 does is it targets it to the specific trends in that area, or what people are purchasing.
Yeah, it'll do that. Plus, I mean, quite frankly, it's as simple as a customer, a retailer logging into our system, seeing a digital atlas on the screen and saying, all right, I want to circle these 50 stores. And anytime someone's near these 50 stores, I want to show these specific messages or these specific experiences.
Wow.
An experience could be, hey, you know what? You're near a low velocity store. So you know what? I'm going to give you an incentive to come in, right? Just only those stores. I don't want to give these incentives for my entire chain, because I don't need to. But I do need to give them for specific stores that need the love, right? So that's the whole idea.
That is incredible.
Yeah, it's almost like Pied Piper. It's almost like you get to be the Pied Piper and drive traffic to the stores that need it the most by sort of controlling that digital traffic, as particular the channels that you own. And that becomes really exciting.
Wow. So I got to ask this question, right?
Yeah.
We're not going to hide. First of all, we're not going to talk politics, right? We're not going to get into that. But there is a worldwide pandemic right now. Yeah. Everybody who's listening is like, oh, I can't wait to hear what he's doing differently for retail. Dude, retailers, these big box stores are struggling right now. So COVID's changed a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
What are you guys doing to help retailers, help brands, continue to attract consumers?
Well, it's interesting because I think while this pandemic is awful, for a million reasons, we're perfectly suited to help retailers or any organization that has physical locations get through this. Because again, the power of Radius8 is we're hyperlocal. Hyperlocal it couldn't be a better fit for the pandemic because of this particular reason. Store openings and store closings are so fluid, right? It's like, hey, you're doing well in one market, right? Because it was open, because, the pandemic rates were very, very low, but then all of a sudden we got a spike. Guess what? We're shutting things down. Because of the fluidity around this pandemic, and obviously we want to keep our consumers safe first and foremost, how do you as a retailer communicate those ever fluid changes around the pandemic? And Radius8 is perfectly poised to do that. So for example, if you go to a Radius8 customer, imagine if you're a retailer and you say, okay, how does Radius8 help me? And you've got 500 store locations. If you got customers coming to your site, we're going to triangulate your location and say, hey, your nearest store that's actually open, or your nearest store that's closed but only does online sort of customer shopping through video chat or things of that nature, right? So
yeah, totally. Because I still got to get my NMDs and my my Yeezys, right? Pandemic or no pandemic.
Listen, pandemic or no pandemic, shopping is going to happen, whether it's in store or online. I think what the pandemic has definitely shown all of us is that digital traffic, digital sales have definitely spiked. That's obvious because as a society, we've said to everybody, stay home. The result of that is, of course, you're going to see a spike in online sales, right?
No doubt.
No surprise there, right? That is a prescriptive behavior that has been issued to society. Now, as stores open, or as we did this great case study, this great deployment with Church's Chicken. They got over 1,000 locations across the country. But guess what? Some restaurants, you can't eat in any restaurants, right? You can't actually dine in.
Correct.
But guess what? You can go in and pick up and walk it out. Curbside, they do delivery, all of those things. We did a great case study where they deployed Radius8. And we increased their online conversion by about 10%. We increased their engagement by about 25 or 30%. I mean, these numbers are off the charts in terms of what we've been able to do for them. But Justin, I think the key takeaway here is this. Radius8 and stores, have been really, really strong for us, particularly in Europe. We did this deal with this, obviously not only we live with Adidas, not only in France and the UK, but also we're live with them here in the United States. But we also have another retailer out in Europe called Hunkmuller. They're like the Victoria's Secrets of the Netherlands, of Europe. They got about 900 store locations. And when they opened up, so it's one thing, Dr. Fauci, we shut down the United States like a light switch. Pandemic's coming, shut that thing down. No markets are open. We're done, right?
Totally.
Until we figure out what's going on. Now, as Dr. Fauci said, and he's 100% correct, the same way in which we shut down the markets, we're not going to light them back up the same way, right? We're going to do a rolling open. So when you do a rolling open, some markets open, some markets don't. How do you communicate that to your customer? And the underlying technology that powers Radius8 that we supply to our customers precisely solves that problem by being able to, a retailer can log into our system and say, okay, look, out of my 800 stores, these wave of stores are going to open. Great. Let my customers know. So now when customers are on my website and they're near those store locations, I want to let them know that it's open. Not only that it's open, I'm going to give you an incentive to go in because I missed you. We missed those in-store sales and you missed us. Look, the reality is consumers want to shop in that store. Let's not get that twisted. The reality is that, online sales represents, maybe 10% of overall sales, right? You're going to get your greatest growth digitally because when things are so nascent and they grow, of course, you're going to see 500% year over year growth. That's obvious. But when you take a step back and look at the bigger picture, store sales still dominate. They still, that is the number one sales channel in retail. And consumers actually love to shop in those stores too. Now, here's the thing. What I'm not saying is it's stores versus digital. It's stores and digital together.
That's exactly where I was going to go with my next question to you, man. And you tied, dude, let me just tell you this quick story. So I get up early to go get a fresh haircut this morning because I look like a caveman. Oh, thanks, buddy. So I shoot down to my barber. This dude has been cutting hair at Phil's Barber in New Haven, downtown New Haven, for 55 years. He's the first guy that cut my hair when I was a baby. Okay. Yeah. He's who I go to, Carl. The dude is living in the back of Phil's barbershop right now because his wife has got an upper respiratory deal. And she's like, if you want to go cut hair and be with your customers, I'm sorry, but like, you can't come back. Cause if I get this thing, I'm done. Yeah. The dude is sleeping on a cot in the back of his retail store to service his customers. Wow. Well, guess what? Wow. I loved going in there, man. It's a sense of normalcy. So the fact that you have the ability to tie in digital, into digital, mobile, into brick and mortar, I mean, like, it's incredible. It's incredible. You're actually doing a really, really good thing for retailers, for the economy. And by the way, we're not only talking about fashion apparel retailers. You just talked about a chicken, food retailer, a food retailer, which is also incredible. We crazily, right? I started this thing about a month ago. Very fortunate to be on here, but I've got some listeners that want to be CEOs, right? They want to know how they do. Tell me about your day in the life of a CEO. You get up, talk to me. Come on.
Well, listen, it's like, listen, I tell you, I had this conversation. It's funny. It's funny. We have four co-founders here at Radius8, right? So it's myself, it's Evan, Chi, and Brendan. And when the pandemic hit, listen, when the pandemic, and this is going to correlate to your listeners who want to be CEOs. Listen, man, stuff hit the fan, when the pandemic hit. And I think like every company on the planet, they were like, "Oh, dude, are we gonna survive this?" Um, and
Totally.
and so part of that, you know, that time was you have to have the right mental sort of place. So it's funny because I was talking to Evan, one of our co-founders, a couple months ago. He's like, Sandeep, every morning you probably have to be like Tony Robbins to get yourself motivated every day. You know what, dude? You kind of got to psych yourself out
You do.
every morning because this job is hard work. It's not like Silicon Valley, like that TV show where it's all glamour and you're taking, big dumps on the conference table of some venture fund and they fund you $50 million because they love the gravitas of your personality. That is not real.
It's totally not real.
That is not real, man. Um,
You got to be able to take some punches, man, every single morning. Like, same thing. You talked about that switch getting flipped off, man. I came in Woodbridge Worldwide, dude. I had it was crazy. January and February was nuts. Like, clients were like, "Oh, we like Sandeep, but we also like Justin. We're going to hire them both." And I'm like, "Oh my God, this is great." And I think it was like March 2nd or whatever Monday that was, I had to call candidates. I had to call clients. I had to call, people were like, "Hey, I'm just going to stay put. We're going to feel this out." Companies like Radius8, by the way, I'm sure based on our conversation before this podcast, like you guys started to take the proper steps to make sure you're going to make it through very successfully.
Well, listen, I can tell you that we had to have a lot of hard conversations internally, right? We all made the decision as a team that we didn't want to let anybody go, right? And so what we decided was, look, we're gonna cut costs, right? Cutting costs means we're gonna like take a hit on like the burn, and the burn means salaries. And some of us that could afford to do it didn't take any salaries, and the balance of the team took salary reductions to keep the company going. And you know what, man, I gotta tell you, I would say for the younger generation that hadn't really seen something like this. Like I remember 9/11. I remember the stock market crash. Prior to that, I mean, look, I'm a Gen Xer, right? So I think we both are. So we've seen a lot in our lifetime to kind of allows us to kind of mentally prepare for this. I would say for those millennial CEOs that haven't really gone through something like this, no one's gone through a pandemic, but if they haven't had any training to go through shit hitting the fan, right?
Totally.
Like this is a rude awakening.
Yeah.
This is like, we were lucky in that we came together as a team. In fact, I thought we were a team before. Nah, we became a team during the pandemic.
Totally. That's great, man. That
really changed everything. And look, to the listeners on this on the podcast, look, I mean, starting a company is a fantastic thing because you know what that does? It stretches your mind, because everything is hard. This is my second time doing a company. It's hard. It's still hard.
And different every time.
Yeah. Hey, listen, you make different decisions. You don't make the same mistakes. You make different mistakes for sure. That's for sure. I mean, look, that is the fact, but you also got to be a little crazy to want to do this. Like, those guys that jump off of planes, not once, not twice, but like 100 times, right? You kind of have to you got to be wired that way to do this job. Because look, at the end of the day, the buck does stop with you. You're the end all decisions, good or bad. Hey, look, when, things happen, the team celebrates and rallies, which is awesome because you want that. But when things get tough, yeah, man, it does fall on your shoulders, and you got to be ready for that because that is what the job calls for.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Look, it's a rewarding job in the end because look, at least for me, I love what I do. I wake up every morning. It's not like I have to psych myself up to do this job.
No Tony Robbins conversation.
I'm already crazy to do this job. It's already crazy. So
Yeah.
for me, I love what I do, and I've been very fortunate to have been able to do this twice, right?
How'd you start, man? Like, honestly, let's talk about that, you
Yeah.
know?
So, it's funny. You know, I was born in Queens, right? And so my parents, they immigrated to this country in the early 70s. And so, retail was in our blood. And not only that, but the hustle was in my blood, right? Because I would see my parents, we had our first candy store in Astoria, Queens. I was 5, man. I was working the back cash wrap. Some guy wanted a pack of Pall Malls. I couldn't read for nothing, but I'm all right, no problem. You want a pack of Players, pack of Marlboros? Here you go, right? I'm putting them on the table, right? So the point is that it was the work, it was the hustle, it was the work ethic, and that was ingrained in me at a very young age, right? And so I had the benefit of having parents that like hustled hard.
Do you
That
think we're missing that today?
I could tell you that 100%,
I
bro.
mean, we're both dads. I mean, my
Yeah,
kid's 13, and I'm trying. God knows, like trying to just get him to
yeah, no,
to
dude.
take the extra step.
I think it's like I had this conversation with other folks our age, our generation, and we sound like those folks like when we were growing up. Oh, you guys have no work ethic. You
Totally,
guys don't know how to work.
totally.
I see that doing saying that to my kids, and it's funny because I do think we're missing that. I do think the benefit I had for me growing up, the single most thing that impacted my life was work ethic. And work ethic by being involved in the trade that your parents were involved in was a huge advantage to me being able to have that. Now, look, I didn't go to Harvard. I don't have an MBA. I
I didn't
didn't do
either.
those things, right? Listen. I think common sense prevails every time. Common sense and hard work, having good work ethic. If you've got those two things, and to your question, how did I get started? Look, I was going to college at Pace in New York City downtown. It's funny because as a kid, I was a self-taught coder. I used to love to program. When I was I don't know, the Tandy TRS-80, man, with the old,
Okay. Wow.
yeah, we're talking like that generation, right? I loved it. I had such passion for it. My parents got me, we didn't even get an Apple computer. We got an Apple compatible computer. We had an old Franklin Ace 2100. I don't know if anybody
Oh
out there
my
knows what that
gosh.
is,
I
but
remember
you
that.
know, I learned to code, right? And for me, that was so passionate about that. I loved it. But what I had was, I was fortunate to have two things. One, hard work, but also hustle. You talked about that story about the customer. Listen, that I get that from my parents working in my retail store. Look, when you're an immigrant, right, and you're in the 80s, and you're just trying to assimilate, and you're trying to have retail, and you're trying to make it work. What do you do? Hey, what do you want? Oh, you want that particular product? I don't have it today. I'll get it tomorrow. No
Yeah.
problem, right? You got to do what it takes to earn the business. And I think I underline that word earn. You got to earn the business every day. And
Wow.
so seeing that as a young kid, how my parents earned business, working the shop floor of the retail store, that is ingrained in your mind. And now that proliferates in everything that I do in my life, right? Whether it's all about the relationship. How do you earn the trust in that relationship to get them to do something in terms of business, whether it's buying a product, recommending, being a reference for you for another prospect, whatever that is. Hey, listen, you're always selling something to someone, whether it's a product to a customer, whether it's equity, shares to an investor, whether it's selling the prospect of, hey, man, come and work in my company. You're a great developer. You're selling every day. You're convincing somebody every day to do something. And that that was ingrained in me at a very young age to be able to do that.
These stages in our lives, right? I love this conversation because like this isn't scripted. We're just rolling, right? We tried to script it, but we both knew that wasn't going to happen. With these stages in our lives, you learn. Dude, you were talking about, you couldn't read at 4 or 6 years old, but
Yeah, right.
you knew the logo, you knew it. If there, as a CEO, co-founder, Radius8, Global Bay, very successful organizations, if there's one thing that you wish you had known getting into this before, you know, we always look back, right? You're not supposed to spend a lot of time looking back. That's why the rear view mirror is like, you know, 1.5 by 5 inches wide and the windshield's huge. But, you know, if there's one thing that you wish you knew or had learned or understood before you got into it, what would it be?
I don't know that there's, so I don't know that there is, like, I went, so look, I went into building this company eyes wide open, right? So I wish I knew that. For me, if anything, I would say, and people say this all the time, but I don't know if it registers, but I think getting product market fit as soon as you can, that to me, for me, it would probably be the single most thing I wish I could have changed. Where we are today at Radius8 with this great product, great sort of you know, the way to talk about it. Because keep in mind, what we do here is we don't sell something that people know they need, right? They don't know that. No one wakes up every morning and says, "Whoa, why does my website look the same?" No one knows that that's a problem.
It does.
Right.
They feel great because they have a website that like looks good.
Right. That's right. But no one thinks about, oh, wait, do I need to localize that? No one thinks like that.
Wow.
So when you're a company like us, where, you know, we did not raise Silicon Valley money, right? We didn't raise like $30 million or anything like that, right? We only raised like $4 million. And so from that vantage point, I would say if I could change one thing, that would be the one thing, which is gotten to the point in which we are today sooner in our evolution of the business. But at the same time, I would say, well, there's no way we would have gotten here. Listen, you got to get into traffic to get hit, right?
Yeah.
Right. No. So you can't just,
especially where you live.
Yeah, especially. Listen, you can't make this up, right? The reality is you got to go and get a lot of no's, right? And once you understand the no's, you understand why things don't work, then you get better. Then you sort of like, you know, sharpen the edges, right? That's when the sculpture evolves into this beautiful piece. Initially, it's a piece of like rock and it's a block. But over time, when you hit the right edges and the right pieces, guess what? You've got this amazing structure. So that is kind of, you know, I just wish for us that, and quite frankly, it might not be a problem. It might be just fine because things take their own time. I'm just a patient guy, right? So from my point of view, I would just wanted to gotten to this place sooner. But look, hey, these steps are necessary. You can't, you know, you can't accelerate aging a bottle of wine. It takes time.
There you go.
It takes time.
This guy's incredible, man. Comes full circle to the intro. No, like, you know, and I'm here. I am kind of gearing up for the next question. You know, who are the major influencers in your life? And I know you're going to say your mom and dad probably as the first. I mean, they got you. Yeah. They got you wrong. But like, give me a couple others that influence you, you know, to get where you are and like what you saw in these people. Like what?
Yeah. You know, it's funny. I'm an 80, you know, I'm born in the 70s and, you know, of course my parents, right. You know, that goes without saying, but I would watch these movies as a kid, you know, what was that? You know, Secret to My Success, Michael J. Fox, right?
Oh yeah.
That kid who works in the mailroom. He, you know, one of the scenes is he's standing in front of this big building somewhere in Wall Street. And it's like, wow, you know, he's saying to himself, you know, I made it. I'm saying to myself, gosh, you know, I want to be like that one day. And, you know, I would say movies was a big influence for me, wanting to be successful. Movies like, you know, hey, I know this is funny, but Pirates of Silicon Valley, that was a great movie. I enjoyed that. Of course, you know,
you can connect to that though as well. You know, it's like, yeah.
100%. And look, you know, and of course, you know, market makers, right? Like Steve Jobs, right?
Yeah.
You know, he's every tech person's sort of influence, right? But of course, you know, seeing things like that, and of course, you know, movies that I would watch as a kid influenced me. But key influences, you know, I would say would be my parents, my parents, Steve Jobs. Not for nothing. I would say that my wife was she was a pretty inspirational to me too. From the vantage point of, she worked at corporate America at J&J for a long time, and
Okay.
it was interesting because I had thoughts that were jumbled, and she would sort of impart to me framework, parts of frameworks in terms of marketing frameworks and how J&J thinks about the world. I'm like, oh my God, that makes so much sense. And things like that were really, really helpful and really exciting for me. And
of course, support, right?
yeah, dude, you can't, guys, you cannot do this job at all if you don't have the support. Either do this job and be single, or do this job and have a partner that supports you. Because if you want to do this job and your partner does not support you, you will be miserable. Your team will be miserable. This will not be a success.
Yep. I got to ask you a question about, because I'm in the recruiting business, and I don't know if you know how this whole thing started. I got inundated by telephone calls, by emails, like crazy, right at the beginning of March. I mean, millions of people like unemployed. And I couldn't help anybody. Long story short, my son was like, dude, start a podcast. 15 minutes later, he's texting me like, podcast 101s for dummies, to learn how to do it. But part of the reason is having these conversations to really try to help people. And I want to ask you, as a CEO, as a co-founder of two very successful companies, plus that, what do you look for in people, man? We talked a little bit about that work ethic. That is not always well, I think you can, when you meet somebody, you can really determine that. But like, what are some of the key characteristics you look for when you're interviewing a candidate?
It's funny because I'm going to answer that question with what I tell my kids. I say to them, look, you need to be able to do three things, right? One, learn how to think. That doesn't mean you know all the answers, right? But it means you know how to process and break something down and learn how to think.
Man, that's big.
Right? That's the first thing. The second thing is learn how to be articulate, both written and oral, right? Because if you know how, the biggest problem that exists, I don't care if you're building a skyscraper or writing code, if you can't communicate the most basic things, right, you're never going to be successful. I don't care if you're the best engineer on the planet. If you can't communicate effectively, simply, articulately, both written and in oral fashion, right? To me, that trumps everything, right? Because you could learn skills you can learn, right? But if the work ethic, listen, you know what? That is something you can learn. That is something that is, look, as a kid, no one's instilled with work ethic.
You see what's going on around you, and you're like,
that's right.
Dad is working his butt. Like, let me see if I can help him out a little bit.
That's right. That's exactly right. Right. So really, honestly, to the candidate that's out there, look, you don't have to be the best. Again, for me, when I hire for me in my companies, what I look for is, can you hold the conversation? Are you articulate? Are you passionate about something? I don't care what it is, something where you could communicate what that thing is. Are you a good writer? Can you articulate key points? Are you a people person? Because if you could do those things, I think you can learn other things. You can learn marketing. You can learn project management. You can learn,
selling.
You sell, right? You can learn those skills. But if you have a good work ethic and you can communicate, the world is your oyster, my friend. No problems.
It's awesome. It's a common trend in very successful CEOs and very successful organizations, right? Sales-minded CEOs, opportunistic-minded CEOs. Like, it's not so much, I'm finding this through all the years of recruiting, it's not so much like, hey, what I need to hear about, the technology you're selling. I had a client that had every single candidate present, and one woman presented how to ride a bicycle. Like, pretty much all know how to ride a bicycle, but there's a right way of doing it if you want to be efficient. I mean, like, and she blew them away.
That's awesome.
Everything from like foot positioning on, I mean, she was like a triathlete. So like super
cool.
into like, the right,
Yeah.
Positioning and proper pedal stroke and aerodynamics and all this stuff. And, seat, I mean, it was nuts, but like she could present, and she presented something unbelievably interesting to her. So like they loved it. Anyway, on with the show here. Resumes versus LinkedIn. Where if you hear somebody is looking, or if I mention somebody, what are you doing? What are you looking at? How much weight do each play?
Well, it's funny because before I got my co-founders together to start this company, after I had left Verifone, I was home for 6 months, right? Kind of first 3 months were awesome. The next 3 months, like I was going out of my mind, and I'm like, okay,
I remember that.
Yeah, like, I need to go get a job. So someone made an intro to another. There was this private equity funded business, and the guy's like, "Hey, send me a resume." Like, resume? Like, I've LinkedIn. I'll send you my LinkedIn. I'm like, dude, I don't have a resume. He goes, yeah, well, we need a resume. I'm like, well, if that's the gating factor for having a conversation, then okay, I don't have a resume. I guess I'm not going to get this job, because that I don't know. I think resumes if anything, are a formality. But I think the reality is, with the where the world is today and where it's going to continue to go, is I think LinkedIn is going to be the source of truth.
Yeah.
Or because it's not just, to me at least, it's not just what you say on LinkedIn. It's your activity on LinkedIn, things you like, comments you make, people you know, right? Because that helps me very quickly see, oh, like 10 people I know Barbara. Oh, okay, cool. So she's a known entity. Let me reach out to some of my buddies, see what they think. Okay, great. That all of a sudden I have so much more confidence in taking a call with this person. Versus resume, yeah. I mean, look, those are things that obviously you needed that back in the day, but today, I don't know. I mean, do people ask you for resumes, Justin, or what are you saying?
My business is a little bit different, right? I mean, resumes are essentially a placeholder, right? So that, that candidate is mine. But yeah, I've got some client companies that like to align the two and make sure that there's, truth, right, in the resi, truth in the LinkedIn profile. A lot of organizations, larger ones, have ATS systems where you've got to they need to input the resume into the ATS to help that candidate through the process. Wow. Their CRM, and they thumbs up or they thumbs down the candidate, right? Just as an example, and it triggers the next step or rejection, right? So those are some of the larger ones. But
wow,
I appreciate that, because I work with people that are like, yeah, just send me the LinkedIn profile, or, hey, I don't have a resume. I've only got a LinkedIn profile. For those people listening, there is a way to download a PDF version of your LinkedIn profile on LinkedIn. And that could essentially act as a resume if your LinkedIn profile is updated.
That's good stuff.
Yeah. So that's pretty cool. So let's talk about you as a CEO. Let's talk about your team. We're coming up on the end here, but how do you best motivate these folks?
You know what? I would say, look, for me, look, everybody's motivated slightly differently, right? Evan, he wants to build the best thing on the planet, right? He wants to build really cool tech. My team members, they're looking for delivering the best experiences. So they're all motivated by that. Look, hey, we're not Pollyannish about this, right? We're building a business. We're not a non-for-profit organization.
Right.
Right. This is right. So we are here to have, to be successful in our careers, and hopefully along the way make some money too. And so I think what motivates these guys is being able to do something that's different, being able to drive some excitement. And, I would tell you the difference, the inverse of my last business at Global Bay. Our team would work nights to deploy, inventory management at like Ascena. Okay, great. But then when they go to their friend's house, hey, what do you work on? It's hard to explain, but we did this project that you'll never ever see in your lifetime.
Ever.
If you work at an Ascena brand store versus at Radius 8, she can be like, oh man, I got my ass kicked on this project, but dude, go to, check out this website. You can see it going live. It's awesome. So they kind of have these trophies. The trophies are these experiences that you get to showcase to the world, and they can all see. So that's pretty nice and motivating from the point of view of you could see the fruit of my labor, right? By going,
anyone can see it. We're not just talking about the folks that are managing,
right.
Yeah,
exactly. So that I think is a cool motivation factor. Look, and I think for us, and what's been really cool about the companies that we've built is that, we do build a culture where it is a strong sense of family. Because look, you're working with these people,
more than you're with your family.
More than definitely more than you're with your family.
Yeah.
And so it's like being able to have a culture that is like that, I think is important. I'll also tell you that I also think I don't think we're Pollyannish about this either, but as your organization grows, it's hard to sustain that type of culture, I think. I don't know. I'd love to kind of, get other people's thoughts on this. But for me, as I've seen it, going from one culture at Global Bay, we're a 40-man company, to being 6,000 people, being acquired to a company of that nature, I think the culture definitely changes. Obviously, you're far more corporate. You're 6,000 people, right?
Totally.
Expense reports to fill out. Like, expense reports, what the hell is that? I'm not doing, right. So it's things like that, which are crazy.
I have found, by the way, in my experience, now you've got more than I, but I think the cornerstone to keeping an organization as that family, is that tribe, right? Is to have all have that one goal in mind, right? What's the end goal? And everyone needs to be working together to get there. Yeah, that's the key. Right. And as long as you can get that, right, you're gonna maintain that family, that tribe throughout. And I learned that from a book. I think I actually cited it in my first podcast called Tribal Leadership. Really cool.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I'll send you a copy.
Cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. So talked about are you seeing anything else in the industry popping up? Like, what's next?
Listen, I think what's next, I think what's happened, is that with this pandemic, it has clearly accelerated the growth and innovation around digital. And I think what's happening right now, and I think then sort of the next sort of series of things, because I don't think it's gonna be one thing, it's gonna be a series of things, that kind of come into play here are going to be, of course, augmented reality. In fact, we're part of this thing with SAP called SAP IO. It's their accelerator program. And we got accepted to the program just before when COVID had hit. And in our cohort, there was this one cool company called Ventana. And Ashley, she's a CEO there, really, really smart person. I enjoyed getting to know her a little bit. And I think we were also in the cohort, when we did the Station F program with Adidas in Paris, I think she might have been in the cohort after us. But what her company has done, and I think where the world is going to go, is that you have technologies like hers that deliver augmented reality. So if I am at home and I wanted to try on a pair of shoes, they can actually use the camera on your phone to superimpose a pair of shoes on your foot.
Damn.
So that's kind of cool, right? If you think about it from that point of view, that is not just an e-commerce site experience. It's not a single dimensional page experience. It's bringing three dimensions to that shopping experience, which is kind of cool.
Absolutely.
And then I think you got companies like, a friend of mine, Alistair, CEO at Hero, they've got a great platform where, if anything, I think before the pandemic, they were doing fine as a company, but post-pandemic, I think every retailer is knocking on their door because what their technology does, because keep in mind, when retailers had this pandemic hit, they didn't let their staff go. They were still paying salaries.
Oh,
They
yeah.
were still on the clock, but they were at home. So they're like, okay, if you're going to be at home, why don't you still sell? So they have these enabling technologies. Companies like Hero have a platform where now you arm the store associate who's working at home with an app where they can chat, they can FaceTime, they can share catalogs, and they can kind of do that sort of co-selling experience. So I think it's not one technology; it's going to be a series of technologies like this
Sweet.
that are going to sort of bridge the gap. That are going to bring digital and physical closer together. And of course, Radius8. I mean, I'm not going to say those two guys are great. I'm not going to mention my company. My stuff is great too.
Absolutely.
But it's like
Always be selling, baby. Always be selling. Love it.
close ABC, bro. ABC's of sales, right?
Always be closing. Yeah. Yeah. So if you were in my shoes, what would you have asked yourself that I didn't?
In terms of this interview.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
it's
man.
interesting. Happiness is interesting. Are you happy doing this? You know, it's interesting because
Oh, man.
you know,
That's deep.
there's a lot of, you know, what's interesting with this pandemic is, you know, this pandemic of course has been a horrible thing for our planet, for our countries, for our citizens, for our elderly. We've lost a lot of people due to this pandemic. But I think what this pandemic has also done is it's forced us to just be home and spend time with our kids and have dinner with our kids. Dude, I'm doing 120,000 miles on a plane. I'm not home with my kids, right? And so this
Right.
pandemic forced me to be home, you know, begrudgingly. But then I'm like, well, you know, it's been actually pretty awesome to kind of like those little moments of, you know, micro moments with your kids in between. You're at the fridge and you're walking to the table, right? That something funny happens that I would never be home to see or witness, right?
That is so cool, man.
It's
That
things
is,
like
yeah.
that. So, you know, I think happiness plays a factor here. It's interesting because you know, I think, you know, I gotta tell you, if anything, um, being one, not to sound like, you know, crazy here, one of the, you know, but it's like there is a harmony that does exist with your inner self, your inner being, and the universe as a whole. I think there is a connection there, and I think that when you are off balance, it does affect everything else in your life. And I don't think, at least for me, I'll speak for myself. Look, I don't know that I've got balance, but I definitely try, and I definitely, you know, I'm more cognizant of being able to try to achieve that balance. And I think if anything, the you know that balance is that's hard work, man. I mean, I think there are people out there that just do it, and it's amazing to me how they do it so easily. For me, I struggle because like
The work life balance, or just your own balance, like your inner balance that generates that happiness,
well,
dude. We Yeah,
for me, it's all interrelated, man.
I know.
You know, and for me, it's like you know, I think what you know, it's interesting because you know when I did Global Bay, what defined it was, and I didn't realize this until I left Verifone, because that company defined me as a person for like 7 years, right? I didn't really. That was me and Global Bay were synonymous with one thing, and it was just me and Global Bay. That was like my life. So I said, oh, okay. When I do this company, I want to separate that out. I don't want to do that. I want to actually have it where Radius8 is its own entity, and I have my own entity, which is me, and being able to separate that out. But you know, just bad habits, and it's also just you know, I don't know. It's just you know, it's that whole thing with balance, and I think with COVID and this pandemic, it's forced me to think about that a bit more and forced me to be more cognizant
That's
about that,
awesome.
which has been helpful.
You know what that translates to? It translates to health. It translates to health
Oh,
as well, man.
bro,
I mean,
yeah.
it really does. It's all connected. It is. It's all interconnected. I think it's huge. Yo, where can listeners find you? How do you want to be contacted?
Yeah, listen, man, I got, you can find me on Twitter. You could, go to radius8.com. I'm on LinkedIn. Reach out to me there. You know,
I'll put some
just,
links up. I'll put
yeah,
some links up in the comments.
yeah, for sure, man. Absolutely.
Dude, this has been awesome, man. I love talking to you. Every single time I connect with you, I learn something else. And I'm really thankful, very fortunate to have you on today. Thanks for stepping up and coming out.
Hey, thanks for having me on, man. I really enjoy talking to you, bro. This is great, man. I really enjoy it.
Absolutely. Continued success for sure.
Hey, to both of us, my friend. I
All right.
appreciate it.
We'll talk again soon.
Okay, bye bye.
See you. Bye. Bye-bye.